Why I went to medical school. I was born in a very small city at the end of the southern part of Korea called Samcheonpo. My father was a government official in the Office of Education, so my family had to move around frequently. I spent most of my childhood years in Samcheonpo and Jinju, another city in the south of Korea, where I also received my primary, secondary, and post-secondary education. After high school, I went to Ewha Women's University School of Medicine in Seoul, graduated as the top student from the 2-year pre-medical school and as an honor student from the 4-year medical school. I obtained my medical license in 1986. The thought of wanting to go to medical school first appeared in my 4th grade during an ethics class, when I first learned about Albert Schweitzer. I was deeply moved by his devotion as a medical missionary in Africa, as an established man with 2 doctoral degrees. Since then, he became my role model. I practically had no personal life in medical school. I was too devoted to studying. I rarely got enough sleep to remain a top student. Although Ewha Women's University is well known for its annual festival, I never attended a single event during the course of my 6 years there, because every minute mattered. I also received a full scholarship from Doosan Group, one of the major companies in Korea. Then and now, this was an honor, because there were only 2 recipients in the entire country, and I was one of them. I maintained the scholarship until after my graduation. Starting from the 3rd year, classes were held at Ewha University Hospital. All students wore white gowns during the class taught by clinical professors. I enjoyed the classes greatly, but in some ways, I was disappointed and realized that most of my professors seemed materialistic and more interested in personal gains than academic challenges. I started to become distressed. I wanted to ask my classmates about their motives on becoming a doctor as well, so I began going around to each classmate to find out about why they had chosen to come to medical school. To my utter surprise, all of them said they came because their parents wanted them to, and once they became doctors, they would be living comfortably and be respected by society. Nobody in my class came to medical school out of compassion towards dying souls. This truth was so shocking that I started feeling ashamed about wanting to become a doctor. To make matters worse, one professor came to class to teach about giving emergency treatments and put me in greater despair. The professor instructed us that when a patient comes to the emergency room in the middle of the night, no matter how severely injured he or she may be, even to the point of near death, we were not to accept him or her if that person seemed clearly incapable of affording the medical expense. Actually, Korea at the time did not have a structured national medical insurance system, so when emergency accidents took place, the medical cost, even for the essential tests, was extremely expensive. However, being publicly instructed by the professor to send back the seriously wounded or even dying patients due to money made me be repulsed by the reality of the medical world. As a result, I changed my career goal to become a renowned scientist rather than a doctor after graduation. When I tell people this story, I am often asked why I did not go to Africa like Dr. Schweitzer did. By the time I had graduated, I was only 22 years old, with a stubborn father who would have never let his own daughter go to Africa by herself at such a young age. With becoming a top-tier scientist as my new life goal, I pursued my master's degree in physiology at Seoul National University in College of Medicine. Once I received my master's degree, 3 years later, I continued my studies there for a doctorate degree. But somehow, my heart was still not satisfied. I felt that I needed more education from the United States to carve out a path to become a distinguished scientist. So I started studying English and took TOEFL and GRE. Eventually, I was accepted to the medical school at Brown University for the PhD program. I moved to the US in July 1990, worked really hard in academics and research, and finally received my doctorate in physiology 3 years later. After my doctorate at Brown University, I was given an opportunity to do research on the physiology of the human body at UCLA for 4 years. There, I refuted a theory that had been predominant in the field for 30 years. I conducted research on molecular science, which proved the mechanism that would explain how our bodies receive signs and transmit them to the brain in the cellular level, and how the signs from the brain are transmitted to the cell in the peripheral nerves. My findings have produced academic success. 3 of my doctoral dissertations were published in the Biophysical Journal. My research result was published in Neuron magazine. My thesis is in graduate school textbooks, and my work will be cited by others over the next 50 to 100 years. Looking back, my life was centered in studies and my own reputation, although now I know how meaningless they are. I came to the US in the 1990s with a goal of becoming a prized scientist with the Nobel Prize for Medicine. I was very naive back then, but it didn't take long to realize the Nobel Prizes were awarded to people with great achievement from great nations, not those with great achievements alone. I knew I had a very low chance because Korea at the time had weaker international presence than Japan or the US. Having to compromise with this reality, I once again changed my career goal to having my name written in school textbooks, which did come true after my research.